It was a beautiful day. Clear skies, the sea was calm. A great day for a cruise across the South Pacific. Unless you were on the USS Terrier, a destroyer with the U.S. Navy, which my father was. He told me that day they had a freshly minted JG, junior grade officer, straight out of the academy, standing watch. And not far from him, there was the ship's barber, also known as the ship's drunk. And this guy was so bad, they didn't have a brig on the destroyer. Destroyers were small, that the captain ordered the crew to build a brig out of old ammunition cases so they could just lock him away when he was really out of it. So here were these two gentlemen, bright uniforms, standing there with binoculars, and the ship's drunk standing there with bloodshot eyes, when, wouldn't you know it, out there on the horizon, just a little tiny speck appeared. The drunk shouts, "Enemy plane! Open fire!" JG, standing there with his binoculars, says, "Belay that order. Friendly plane, hold your fire." Another minute or two passed. The drunk says, "Enemy plane, open fire!" "Belay that order. Friendly plane, hold your fire." And the plane got to where, with the naked eye, it looked to be about the size of a pigeon. And the drunk calmly looked at the JG and said, "Have you ever seen a friendly carry fish like that?" Fish being torpedoes. At which point, the JG started screaming, "Enemy plane, open fire!" It was too late. He was already in his run. He dropped his fish, got away clean, and my father said he watched as that telltale sign came right to midship. He grabbed and embraced himself for impact, and nothing happened. And he looked on the other side of the ship, and the telltale sign of that fishtail went on out into the sea harmlessly. The pilot had made an error. He had set the torpedo at a depth, probably for a cruiser, mistaking the destroyer for a cruiser. That story came to me with John's question in this gospel. "You brood of vipers, who warned you to flee the wrath to come?" There was two warnings of an oncoming wrath. One was heard, "Enemy plane, open fire. There's danger approaching." And the other was heard, a denial. "No, friendly, hold your fire." And that's what happens in society sometimes, whether it's climate change, whether it's other issues, we seem to get polarized and frozen in two extremes. And we don't have a way to meet in the middle. Who warned you of the wrath to come? Sometimes the wrath comes without warning, like it did Friday morning up at Sandy Hook Elementary School, with devastating results. 20 children. 20 children. You know, they're there, they're learning how to read. The world is opening up to them. They're excited about Christmas. And all that excitement and potential lost in a moment of insane violence, along with 6 others who cared for them. What shall we do when the wrath visits us? That's the other question that was asked to John. What shall we do? And John, through Luke's gospel, is speaking to a group of people that's much like our country is right now in post-traumatic stress. They had just lost Jerusalem, a whole city. They had just lost the mother church, gone. pushed out into the sands of Jordan. They had lost everything. So what do we do now in the face of loss? John says, do what you do. Live. Only as you live, live with greater compassion. If you have 2 coats and you know somebody else is cold, give them the other coat. If you have plenty of food and you know somebody else is hungry, then let them be fed as well. And you, if you're in a position of authority and power, don't abuse that authority and power. Use it to make the world a better place. The quality of us as a culture, us, not just the members of St. Mary's, but the citizens of the United States, our quality is going to be determined in how we conduct ourselves after this wrathful moment. Now, you've already heard it. It's covered the media. I've already read an article that said the NRA has blood on its hands. And then I've also read an article that, oh, watch, they're going to start making all these claims about gun control. They're going to take our guns away. So there we have the 2 extremes. Melt down all the guns, and maybe we ought to have a law like they do in some towns out west where it's unlawful for people not to own a gun. And we're frozen. Is that who we are as a culture? Is that who we are as a people? Or do we have the courage and ability to begin to have a fruitful conversation about responsible ownership of firearms in this country? Responsible, which means in a way that will not allow firearms or will make it very difficult for firearms to get into the reach of people who are unbalanced or whose anger has consumed them and they can only take it out on a theater full of people watching a movie or a temple of Sikh worshipers in Wisconsin or college students in Virginia or kindergartners in Connecticut. And that takes me to one other thing that I think is really important for us as a people and as a nation to discuss. We have spent decades debating health care in this country. And how many times during that debate have you heard anything about mental health care, emotional health care? This thing we carry around between our ears, when something goes wrong with it, it's immediate stigma still. It's an organ, like any other organ in our body. We have great fundraising apparatus for cancers of all kinds, for heart disease, for Parkinson's. Why don't we have fundraisers for schizophrenia, for psychoses, for personality disorder, for mood disorders? Why isn't our energy there as well? We've got to get over that stigma and hopefully come to the place, like John says, if you have 2 coats, okay, I have a little extra money. Maybe health care should be beefed up in these areas. And along with that, maybe we need to reopen the discussion about what it takes to keep someone under a 72-hour observation. I was sharing with the Journey to Adulthood class this morning that I had a person come into my office that was clearly delusional. There was nothing I could do for that person. As long as that person did not make a statement like this, I think I want to kill myself, or I think people are after me and I'm going to have to kill them. That's the only way somebody that is clearly ill will be required to receive health care in this country. We need to be able to talk to each other and not get out here on these crazy extremes. Come to the middle point of reason. The loss is just too great. The loss is just too great. Who warned you to flee the wrath to come? And the question, perhaps the better question is, after that wrath has visited us, what will we do to realistically lessen the possibility of it ever visiting us again?